Hello, everybody, and welcome to Blue Jays Today, where you boys always have something to say with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Nicholas Playalog.
And I'm your host, Adam Peddle, and today, guys, we've got a free agency update for y'all. We're going to be talking about one of the coveted free agents on the market this offseason. We're talking about Anthony Santander from the Baltimore Orioles, and that we've been linked towards maybe being a potential suitor to go get him this offseason. Before we get into it, guys, and break it all down, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Blue Jays Today for your latest Blue Jays news and updates this offseason. So yeah, we got an update from Jim Bowden from The Athletic, how he says that, yeah, the Blue Jays, they should be a potential suitor and they should be going for someone like Anthony Santander.
Yeah, over here you can see that he's listing the Toronto Blue Jays as a top fit for Santander, and I mean, obviously shout out to Jim over there, but this isn't the first time that we've heard this. You know, a lot of people, a lot of you actually have been shouting out Santander's name and just saying, like, this is the guy, you know, like obviously Juan Soto's that dude, but assuming that the Toronto Blue Jays are not going to be capable of signing Juan Soto, which would be quite the long shot,
right,
this is kind of your next best thing, you know, somebody to give Guerrero a little bit of protection, kind of play that Teoscar Hernandez type of role. And he did that beautifully this past year over there in Baltimore. You know, flashing over to the statistics, folks, arguably his best season that he's had in MLB just turned 35 days ago. So happy belated Santander.
Happy birthday.
But, you know, hit for a .235 batting average, 308 on base percentage. This is the beautiful stat, though, that .506 slugging with 44 bombs and over 100 RBIs. And obviously, that is something that we desperately need. Other than Vladimir Guerrero Jr., there really just isn't anybody on this team. There's just anyone on this team with power.
I mean, there's really nothing, right? Like, actually, right before this podcast, Nick and I were just looking at the lineup right here, guys. I mean, and this isn't going to be the lineup for next year. This is just a projected thing by RotoChamp because they don't have George Springer or Bo Bichette in the lineup because they were injured with the team at the end.
They don't have Kirk in there.
And they don't have Kirk as well. They have Tyler Heineman, so I don't really know what the hell's going on with Spot Rock over there. But you do see that, you know, you got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and then a ton of question marks. Yes, Horwitz had a good season for us last year, and I'm really looking forward to what he's going to be, but he can't be batting 3 in this projected lineup, right? No. Of course, he won't be for the Blue Jays anyways, but you can see that we do have to add a bit of depth because we don't have anybody in our farm system coming up. So the only way we're going to add some star impact power to this lineup is going to free agency and looking at Anthony Santander. Now, I believe they were talking about it in this article about just how much it would cost the Blue Jays to go get him. So they're talking about here that it could be looking at about $150 million. And if you think about the Toronto Blue Jays history with talking about $150 million outfielders, you're thinking about guys like a George Springer. And obviously nowadays we can look back and go, that aged pretty poorly. But what about Anthony Santander? A little bit different situation there.
Definitely a different situation. He'd be a year younger when signing. I'm looking over at Spot Rack right here just to see their projection. I think that this is complete bull, everybody. They're saying 5 years, $88 million. That's ridiculous. Bull. I think it's a lot closer to the 150 that that Jim was projecting right there. Just because, you know, getting 44 home runs from somebody like that is few and far between. You're not going to find a lot of guys out there that's capable of doing that. And considering he is just turning age 30, you still hope that you've got a couple of years left. Now, the one thing that does concern me, obviously, is, well, we have a aging center fielder out there right now who is kind of hitting the back burner of his career, and obviously contract's not looking so sexy. Could something similar happen with Anthony Santander? Absolutely it could. That is always the risk when you're going to be signing players over the age of 30. Even before that, right? Like if you're signing somebody who's 28, 29, when they get into that 33, 34 aged season, you are going to start to run the risk of the production dipping down. But I suppose I would then put it back on the people that are worried about this, and I guess even put it back on myself because I'm also worried about this, that how do you become a competitive ball team in 2025 like the Toronto Blue Jays have stated that they want to do? They've come out and they've said that we're trying to win. How do you do that without going out and getting somebody of Anthony Santander's quality?
There really isn't, right? Because again, like you don't have anybody coming up. You know, I look over at the Padres and they just had Jackson Merrill come out of nowhere, replace somewhat of the production that Juan Soto was giving them last year, and like that was huge for them, right? Yeah. Obviously, they got the pitching in return for Juan Soto. They were able to make it work. Whereas the Blue Jays, you really don't have anybody coming up that could, put an Anthony Santander season up that we know of.
You'd be asking for someone to win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, you're asking for Elvis Martinez to take those PEDs and put them to work. You know what I mean? Like you got to hit 40 home runs for this kid, which is obviously way too much to ask for in a very tight window right now for the Toronto Blue Jays. So this feels like the only way they're going to do it. And honestly, like if you do spend, let's say, $25 million per year, it's a very similar George Springer contract, $25 million per year for 6 years. That's within the budget of the Blue Jays. You could still go out and go get a couple more relief guys, and then also add an Anthony Santander, run it back with the rotation you have that you feel pretty comfortable with, and you feel a little bit more confident going into next year. But is that going to be enough for the Blue Jays?
Well, that was my next question, right?
Yeah.
Because, from a budgetary standpoint, we're projecting right now from what Ross and what Mark has come out and said that the Toronto Blue Jays have roughly $40 to $50 million that they can spend this offseason. Santander would presumably eat half or maybe even a little bit more than half of that money if you brought him in. So then the question is, with the remaining dollars that you have, are you going to be able to build a competitive ball team with Santander's help and with the current guys on your roster? And I mean, that to me is always where I don't really see eye to eye, I guess, with Ross and Mark. Like, I do find it very hard to see a pathway for us to be competitive next year.
Yeah.
So I think at that point, the better question is, like, or we're kind of disagreeing with their entire direction that they're going in. Because I find it so difficult to see how this team, just with Santander and just with a couple bullpen guys, can go back to being a 90-win squad in the AL East. But I certainly wouldn't. It certainly wouldn't hurt you, let me put it that way. Like, obviously, this is going to help you get better.
Yeah, and you're asking for a lot of other comebacks, right? You need Bobic. If you're still having Bobic on this team, you need him to come back to form. And then George Springer, give us anything. Or you bench George Springer, now you're asking for a lot of these other guys to step up. I'm looking at Loper, Fido, and Clase. And Addison Barger. Like
Alan
Rodin. You're going to need some sort of breakout there. And then to pair that with Horwitz, okay, well, now you're starting to form a bit of a top 4, top 5 in your lineup that can actually go out and compete. But the bigger thing is, obviously, this whole other podcast, filling out that bullpen, and then you got something to work with actually going into next year. So that's all good. But then the other question that we can't answer on this podcast is, does Anthony Santander even want to come here? Time for a quick shout out to Betway. Betway is the best place to make all of your sports bets on all of your favorite teams. Betway is in collaboration with iGaming Ontario, so you must be 19 years or older to participate. You can also scan the QR code to make your account today. And guys, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content. Because that's something that Ross Atkins and Mark Chappelle brought up, that bringing in free agents to Canada is a lot of convincing. Usually they have to do it with their dollars amount.
Yeah.
And asking Santander to come to a losing ball team is going to have to cost a bit more.
And that's going to be, one of those continued things that we're running into this offseason, right? Because, sure, you can offer them as much money in the world as you want, but for somebody like Anthony Santander's capability, somebody who just hit 44 home runs and on a very competitive ball team, you're going to have the Mets calling, and you're going to have the Yankees calling. Whoever misses out on Juan Soto, they're going to be calling this guy,
they are.
right? Like the Dodgers, if they don't sign back Teoscar Hernandez, do they want Santander?
Sure.
Probably. Yeah. And that's just like the big boys, We're not even talking about how the Giants are always in on people, or the Padres, or hell, maybe the Seattle Mariners want to bring something to their offense. I could see all of these teams calling Santander. And then you got to stack up. And, from his standpoint, you're kind of going to be running through it all and going, shit, 74 wins, how many more millions of dollars do I need before I'm willing to make that leap over? So I do think that the Blue Jays are just going to continue to run into that wall. Going back to Jim's point, though, the fit is there. And, as much as we can kind of get on the Jays and wonder, is this going to be enough or anything like that, I'll tell you right now, the current roster we have isn't enough.
Right.
I don't know if Anthony Santander is going to push us over the edge, but it is a step in the right direction. And this offseason kind of feels like one of those things where it's just one step at a time.
Right.
Just try to claw your way out of this thing.
Well, one step at a time in this offseason, but at the end of it all, you got to be climbing up a lot of steps if you want to be getting back
I know.
You know what I mean? And then another point, too, is, you do have Ross Atkins and Mark Chappelle's philosophy of, hey, we're not here to go get power guys. We need contact guys. I do wonder if bringing in the new hitting coach who is all about power and on base percentage, which we've heard from Carlos Correa over there from the Minnesota Twins, that he is all about this new hitting coach. It's about on base but power. So I wonder if he has any influence on the decision making of bringing in some sort of talent.
Oh, he should.
I would hope so.
I mean, you're like,
he's the effing hitting coach.
Yeah, it's like, obviously you need to be listening to this guy. And I will go out. I know this is a bit off topic.
Right.
I said this in a video room recently. I'm very happy with that hiring. Like we've been saying for a long period of time now, we want somebody who's got some youth to them, who's got some bright ideas, who is coming from an external location, and who's got some results. He checks all of those boxes for me. I was really worried they were going to do that whole like little internal, like everybody moves up type thing. No, fuck that. This guy knows what he's doing. He was with the Dodger system for a while. He did a good job with the Twins, who when you look at their lineup, it's not that dissimilar, you know, like, okay,
they have a committee kind of lineup where they kind of play matchups, but everybody still, when you're coming off the bench and half playing time, they still got it, right?
Exactly.
They still have the same philosophy.
And like, I guess, you know, the point I was trying to make there is like, well, if you're doing a good job over at the Dodgers, well, we can just say like, oh, it's Ohtani and it's Mookie Betts and stuff. But it's like the Minnesota Twins, like, you know, it's not like their lineup is like
a plug and play lineup.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like you did help create those guys and make them doing what it is that they're doing. So I like this guy a lot. I do hope that he's got a lot of say in bringing in dudes with power like Santander. I guess in conclusion for me, I am cool. Actually, I'm not cool. I would be thrilled if you go out and you get Santander. The biggest question is he even going to want to come to the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yeah, and that's what we'll have to find out this offseason. Guys, you let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think about Anthony Santander, and how much would you be willing to offer him as a contract this season?
Please hit the like, smash the subscribe button. $3 will become a Patreon member. Shout out and thank you to all of our current Patreon members and our YouTube members. We appreciate every single one of you.
Guys, thank you so much for watching.
And as always,
go Jays, go!